Okay, so this is the next question. Would you explain the difference between trials and tribulations and temptations? And maybe simply explain, just to help us understand. We've heard conflicting information regarding these definitions.
Okay. First off, I did go through and look at the Greek terms for these words, and so when you're looking at trials and you're looking at temptations, they are the same Greek word, peresmon, and or peresmos, depending on you don't care. Anyway, in any case, they are the same word. They're used in slightly different contexts. And so basically a trial is a testing in the sense of trying to see what's going on with you, what's happening with you. And so a trial is a hassle that's designed to bring out your character and to show what you're made of. So that's what a trial generally in the context is about. When you're talking about tribulations, it's the Greek word thlipsis, thlipsis, and it's a hassle that includes suffering. And so a lot of times it's translated affliction. And so that's a trial that includes suffering, and so that can obviously be emotional or relational, or it can be actual in the sense of physical suffering. Being persecuted and those kinds of things. And then the last one was temptation. Generally speaking, that is the same word as the word for trial. Generally, there's some other words that are in there, but these are the most common ones. And but in the context, it's a trap. And so a temptation is when Satan specifically is trying to trap you, or the world is trying to trap you into sinning. And so that's pretty much it. And that's a little bit simplistic, but yeah, it's like that. So trials, it's like, you're being checked out. And so if you went to trial, they would be checking you out to see whether you're guilty or innocent. That's a trial. And tribulation is a hard time that includes suffering. And then finally, a temptation is a trap. So
My favorite passage explaining what Pastor Steve just says is James 1, because it has all those words together in the Greek that he just used. So it starts out with trials, and it's this testing of your faith that God uses to perfect you, and you're supposed to ask him when you're going through that, and all with no doubting and stuff like that. It goes to verse 12, and I don't like the way the New King James does it, because it says, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation," but that word temptation is the same Greek word as the word trials in verse 2, so I think that's a culmination of the first section of James. But then he does go into a whole thing on temptation about, and this is where people, I think, have trouble with the definitions, is that it says God can't tempt anybody. And a lot of times, because I'll just read it, "For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone." A lot of times people will think they're going through stuff that God's out to get them, or they're trying to get him, he's trying to trap them or get him to fall or get him to,
Yeah.
and it's just not the case. The temptation, as James explains, comes from our own desires. And then when those grow, my temptation, if I allow that in my mind, brings forth death, because I allow my sin to be made manifest in my life. So that's, again, a very simplistic version, but I like it because all those words are in there to distinguish between trials, testing, temptation, and how God puts it together. So,
And as he said, the word for trial and temptation are the same. It's the context that gives you the flavor. So,
right.
yeah.